Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the 2025 year in review. When we started to put this together, it was a little overwhelming going back and looking at all the work that was done by the member companies, how much content was created, how many things took place this year, and the advancements that were made in a very short period of time. So thank you for joining us. I'll try and tell a bit of a story about all the things that took place and some of the insights that we've garnered from all of the engagements that we've had with our member companies and community at large. So the Consortium is a not-for-profit industry association, and there are a lot of associations out there. There are a lot of different organizations out there that are focused on knowledge management, AI, content, services, support, professional services, sales, all over the place. I do think one of the major differentiators, though, for the consortium and the way that our work gets done is we really focused on this idea of shared story. And it's shared story and human connection that brings us all together. And it's through these shared stories that we capture and reflect back the experiences of the people that are actually doing the work. And so all of the things that we talk about, all of the models that we generate, all of the knowledge we share back out to the world is based on those real world experiences of people that are doing the work, the people that are innovating every day on where we're going in the future. And what the consortium gets to do is bring all of that information that we learn through all of the work you're doing, capture it, and then share it back out into the world to try and better the services industry. So I want to say thank you to all of our member companies that help us really drive our methods and methodologies forward. This is a list of our benefactor and sponsor level member companies, but we take information in from a very wide perspective of companies, humans, now machines, to think about all the things going on across our industry. I wanted to start off by saying a big thank you to all of the presenters that we had in 2025. And when thinking about the year in review, I really looked this at more as a year of engagement across the industry because we had so many conversations, so many presentations from so many industry thought leaders that it was really quite compelling to think about all of the contributions from all of these people. So I wanted to start by thanking all of our presenters in 2025. We had a lot of them that came to share what they're doing, the challenges they have, the opportunities they're seeing, the successes they're seeing to make everybody else successful. So thank you to everybody who took time out of their schedules to come and spend some time with the consortium membership and the industry at large. Thinking about that year of engagement, and every year I'm shocked by how many events we actually host. In 2025, we hosted 68 events. That's 5 events a month or more that we're hosting. And those events span very large public events down to incredibly small working team meetings. So it is not just, big events that we're hosting, but all of the different ways that we're engaging people across the industry. We had 43 presenters from 36 different companies come and share their experiences, and thousands of people came to listen to these presentations, engage in these events, and share their perspectives. We average about 73 members for our member-only events and around 184 people for our public events, which gives us a very broad perspective to really capture rich content and knowledge and create knowledge from that. And our content spans summaries and notes and discussions that take place, video presentations. And these things lead to us developing new models and updating our methodologies. As anybody who engages with the consortium knows, all of our content, all of our knowledge, all the things we create are always being updated and refreshed. There is very little static content that we have at the consortium, and that's based on all of the work the people here today and the ones that couldn't join us today are doing every day in your jobs. So just an amazing year of engagement. I'll talk about 3 of our kind of premier events and then how those things weave together as we go through the year. Beyond just the events that we host, the consortium staff spends quite a bit of time with other industry organizations and attending other events. This year, the consortium staff attended over 35 events hosted by other organizations. We had conversations with these organizations. We've presented at these organizations. We've helped found some of these organizations. But it really is another way that we're trying to expand our view of the world and bring in more academic thinking from organizations like the organizational design community. So really rounding out some of the things going on across the industry. And if we think about kind of 3 or 4 big buckets that these fit into, there is a knowledge management community out there that goes far beyond KCS. So we're always spending time and energy with the knowledge management community, trying to understand kind of their view of the world, how they're using knowledge management across their enterprise. Thinking about support and services with organizations like Support Driven, and what are some of the bigger trends going on around the services industry. Kelly has spent a lot of time on coaching. Coaching is an absolute key to success in anything you're doing. Any change that's taking place in the company, coaching will help make it more successful. So we've really spent time with professional coaching organizations to round out some of our skills on coaching. And then spending time with more content, data, and semantic professional organizations and thinking about what is it that the more traditional content industry is doing and how are they evolving and how are they innovating, because they're evolving and innovating at an incredibly rapid pace. But the consortium staff spends a lot of time with our member companies hosting our own events, but we also spend a lot of time with other professional organizations, learning from them and seeing what they're talking about. So we bring all of these things back in to help create our methodologies, influence the work that we're doing, and go out and talk to the member companies about the things that they're doing and how they're leveraging all of these different types of perspectives to build out their services and their customer engagements. When we think about the cadence of a year, we really build up to the summit in the spring. And a lot of the work that gets done the previous year is what influences what we talk about at the summit. This year at the summit, we had 120 attendees, which was the most we could have at the hotel. And what I found really interesting about last year's summit was we had 71 first-time attendees. So a very high percentage of people that had never been to a summit before, which brought an influx of new perspectives, new ideas, new people into the kind of consortium world, which was absolutely fantastic. And we've heard a lot from that group of people since the summit about the work they're doing and the things that they're concerned about. The sessions that were hosted focused in on kind of 4 areas. So this idea that reality is in the interaction. And when we think about reality is in the interaction, as we become a more and more digital world, our reality as humans is really changing and shifting based on the interactions we're having with machines and with digital channels. And how does that shape our perspectives on where the industry is going and what are the things we need to think about as more and more of our world is shaped by things that are telling us what to believe instead of doing the exploration on our own. So we explored this idea of that our reality is actually in the interaction of all these things. AI, everybody's favorite topic. So thinking about at the beginning of the year, what are the use cases, approaches, and measures people are using in this new AI world? And while AI is advancing, I would argue that the way we are thinking about our organizations and the way we're thinking about the value we deliver is not keeping up with the way we're thinking about AI and the impacts of AI. And that's a theme that has developed through the year. We also talked a lot about people and culture. So as our reality is shifting, as our use cases for AI and our digital interactions are changing, what is that doing to our people and culture? And how do we make sure we bring people and our cultures along in this world? And then obviously KCS, which KCS is a great foundation for any AI success. We had great presentations on the why, the how, and the advanced uses of KCS in different organizations. Open space, I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, but we had a lot of topics explored. And again, governance and structure, measuring success tomorrow in this new world, the interaction of people and AI and the partnership of those two things, and how do we think about personalization were themes that ran throughout the open space topics. And my favorite part about any of our in-person meetings is the countless connections that are made with new people, meeting old friends, and with 71 first-time attendees there, it was phenomenal to make a whole bunch of new relationships and a whole bunch of new connections that we got to continue throughout the year as we progressed. Thinking about all the sessions that took place, we had 14 presenters, 19 hosts from 13 different companies spanning a broad set of topics. We heard from people that are very mature in how they're thinking about AI and how do we do a thoughtful approach to monitoring an AI implementation. We talked about nurturing an adaptive workforce and what are the things that we have to think about when we're trying to think about our workforces moving forward. And then some great KCS presentations. Some of these presentations were also done after the member summit for a broader audience, like Heather from Twilio. Her thoughtful approach to KCS implementations is a phenomenal presentation and one that she did a follow-up on and presented what she presented at member summit to the rest of the world. And so as we go through next year after Summit, look for presentations that took place at Summit to be put out there into the rest of the world. Open space, always one of the most exciting days and one of the most tiring days of the Summit because there is so much going on. There is so much energy that by the time you get to the end of the day, you're kind of just looking to go to sleep from everything that you learned during the day. The energy, though, at event last year around open space was something that really hit a new level. And we had great event spaces to host different sessions in. I think fighting over outside was the biggest one, with the weather being so nice in Atlanta at that time of year. As I mentioned, we did go through 32 topics. All of those notes are in the member wiki. And a lot of these sessions led to follow-up meetings, led to new things that we started to pull threads at, and have been common themes as we've gone through the rest of the year. So open space at the summit is often one of the areas that helps drive work for years to come. Whether it is a brand new idea that comes out of open space or a twist on an existing idea or a topic that takes a portion of the practices guide for KCS or intelligent swarming and says this isn't working anymore, what are people seeing? Open space absolutely fuels a lot of the discussions and things that take place as we move forward. So it is a great place to come, hear what other people are thinking about, have input into all of the work going on. So I love open space. It is one of the best days at Summit, and hopefully we'll see everybody there this year for Summit or next year for Summit to pull at more of these threads. A lot of the topics and things people care about at Summit then feed into other meetings that take place throughout the year, whether they are working sessions, innovation labs, which are 2-day events in person or remote. And these lead up to big topics. So we take the big topics that we're hearing throughout the year, and we then build an agenda and a discussion for our executive symposium, which is an invite-only event for leaders. At this year's executive symposium, the theme was leadership opportunities and AI-driven experiences. We had 41 leaders from 32 different member companies for that discussion. And it really turned into exploring the way that demand is shifting and the value of support is shifting in this rapid time of change. I would also argue that we've always been in a rapid period of change, that I don't think we're in a new rapid period of change. Since I started in support and services, every year it's been, oh my God, we're changing faster than ever before. So I would argue that we're always in a constant change. But some of the topics we started to explore at Executive Symposium in September is around this idea of intelligence augmentation. So how do we get our people focused on the right things as we are kind of shifting demand and shifting the way that we're interacting with customers? Then the value of support and the channels of demand changing. So Ryan Matthews has been poking at this for a while, and we really have started to have a view of changing demand. And as demand changes, and as we lose a little bit of touch to how customers are actually using our information, what does that mean for the value of support? And then if our value of support is changing, Mike Raley took us through a great discussion on, well, how do you market the value of services and support? And we asked Mike, who was at the time the acting chief marketing officer for Coveo, If you were hired by a support leader or a services executive to market the value of support and services, what would you tell that person to do? So Mike took us through a great presentation on how to think about marketing yourselves, how to tell a story, and then we started building new value propositions for support and services. Really fun way to think about ourselves and start capturing some new ideas. Then Kelly took us through how do we create conditions for innovation in these changing environments, and what are the things that we as leaders have to do to build out an organization that says, hey, we're moving quick. How do we innovate and how do we accept innovation? So which was a great setup to Adam Mullen, talking to us about what are mental models for change and this idea of thinking in systems. And if we have a mental model for change, that will help us as we have to go through all kinds of disruptions. This discussion then feeds into our leadership committee meeting. And the leadership committee meeting is for our benefactor and sponsor level members only. We had 18 leaders from 15 member companies come together, and there were three big themes we discussed. One is, what is the reality of the state of business transformation? And I think everybody agrees that AI is not actually transforming business models in any way, shape, or form today, and that we should stop saying it. Because when we say it, it sets unrealistic expectations for executives on how fast we can leverage these tools to do things. It forces us into a lot of iteration and wasted time and energy to implement things before the maturity is where it needs to be. And it puts a lot of pressure on our people that are looking at it going, the time, energy, and cost of implementing these things is extensive. It is not free to do. So if we keep just saying that, hey, AI is transforming business everywhere without any other context around it, it really is putting a lot of pressure in ways that it shouldn't. So we should stop saying it with the recognition that it is absolutely transforming the ways we can engage people, our operational tasks. It is having a massive impact on how we can do things. But today it's having a massive impact in specific targeted areas, not transforming our entire business model. This idea of revisiting value, which was a theme that started throughout the year. And what is the value of our organization? And if the value of our organization is changing and we have an urgent need to tell a new story about what it is we're doing and what it is we're trying to achieve. And then what is the leadership opportunity in all of this? As the roles of our people are changing, the role of our organization is changing, that our new leaders need a new playbook. The playbook that leaders used 20 years ago when they started their careers into a leadership role is not the same as what somebody needs to know today. We did a fun session at the leadership committee where, similar to the field guide for KCS program management, we said, if you were being put into a leadership role today, what do you wish you were told when that would help you become a better leader? And we started building out what would a leadership playbook look like. So it was a really interesting discussion. When you have people in the room that are managing organizations that maybe have 4,000 people in it, the way they look at leadership is very different than the way maybe leaders today need to think about where we're going in the future. Really exciting discussions. So those were some of the ways that we bring together people, pull a thread throughout the year to start building out what are the insights that we've seen as we've gone through that year. So I want to talk about a little bit some of the insights from the last year of engagement with all of these amazing people. There really are three themes that have developed in the last year, and I don't think they're going to be shocking, and I don't think they're actually new. But intentional use of AI capabilities. Obviously, we can't go anywhere without talking about AI. It was interesting at the leadership committee and the executive symposium how much people are tired of hearing the word AI. And it is just a marketing word at this point, and the reality of it is all over the place. So let's stop talking about it. Of course, then we spent 2 days talking about AI. But when we think about AI capabilities, what we really want to be doing is thinking about the intentional use of those capabilities. And what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve? And then how does the intersection of AI and knowledge help us reach those outcomes? So really becoming specific about what it is we're doing with AI and getting off the AI hype cycle. There was a great discussion about the AI hype cycle and how it really doesn't make any sense in the AI world. The hype cycle doesn't actually make sense in the AI world, which is a different topic, but one that I found fascinating. Would love to pull some strings on. Redefining the value and the role of support and services. So, how do we take a strategic approach to shaping the future of these service organizations? If we are continuing to talk about how quickly we resolve calls, how many calls we take, the volume of cases we take, we're never going to change the value discussion around what it is that support and services actually delivers to the customer and to the company. So, what is a strategic approach to shaping the future of how we think about service organizations and what the value of that organization is? And finally, if we have all of these new capabilities coming online, and we know that the value and the role of our organization is changing, that obviously means that our people's roles and skills need to evolve. And so, how do we create those conditions for rapid evolution in this fast-paced change? So, what is the impact on people? And as leaders, how do we prepare everybody for where we're going and what this future looks like? So, these were three kind of big themes that developed as we went through 2025. So, to talk about the reality of business AI implementations and the work that was done to develop the Consortium's AI blueprint, which was the first version of it, was released at the summit in Atlanta. We have member companies that are using it and are starting to provide feedback on it. So we expect that to start evolving. But when we think about the reality of business AI implementations, across many, many studies, not just the MIT 2025 study that is often cited as, how much Gen AI pilots are failing. Across many different organizations, they're reporting that between 80 and 90% of all Gen AI pilots fail to deliver any measurable impact. And only about 5% of our AI projects transition to a full-scale production environment. And they're using these numbers to really drive people to say we need to kind of stop with some of the crazy spinning of pilots and testing ideas. And I actually disagree with that, because I think one of the interesting things about the AI tools today is they are easy to play with, they are easy to test, they are easy to pilot. Those pilots, those innovations are leading to new discoveries of how we can use them. This is very different than a lot of previous tools where it was very much, we need to find a tool to do something very specific. I think these AI tools are opening up a lot of new ideas for things we can do, and we should explore those ideas. We should have innovation centers that are testing things and playing with it to see how things are going to progress in the future. If we're not doing that, I think we're going to fall behind really quickly in what we can do with these new technologies. A bit more scary, or where there's a lot of money being lost, is 70 to 90% of production deployments fail in continuous operations. So when we take something, we really move it to full scale operation, 70 to 90% of those don't maintain themselves in continuous operations. And that's a lot of money, because when we think about what it takes to put something into full scale production, there's a lot of people involved, projects involved, infrastructure involved. There's a lot of money involved. So having 70, 90% of things fail in production is something that to me is definitely worth looking at and thinking about how do we improve that. And then companies are reporting that last year they abandoned about 42% of their AI initiatives, which was up from 17% in 2024. I don't know if this is a misleading number, because I'm guessing there were a lot more AI initiatives in 25 than there were in 24. So maybe that alone means a higher percentage of AI initiatives being abandoned. But these things cost a lot of money. Piloting and testing AI projects, I don't think that actually costs much money these days, but the sustained operations and abandonment rates can cost you quite a bit of money. But if we think about what's behind some of these clickbait numbers, so the idea that we're still in this hype of what's the new latest flashy thing that we want to do. We go to a new conference, we see some new thing that looks awesome and would transform how we're doing support. And then we come back and we want to play with that and we try to implement it, but we didn't think about how it actually fits our business outcomes. So this hype of flashy ideas dominating still seems to be persisting across the industry. Even today, we still hear from people that I was just put into a new role to try and go figure out how to use AI because I was told we need to be using AI at my company. We need to use AI is not a business objective in any way, shape, or form. So we're still scrambling to figure out where to use AI, which causes a lot of issues if we want to move things into sustained production. Data and systems integrations, we're hearing more and more about this. So we all know that bad data and not having availability of data is death to AI. We need to train the AI with something, and if we don't have it, then I'm not sure what we're going to train the AI on. Some of the reports talk about up to 85% of the reasons we're seeing failure for things in production is because we didn't actually have the right data availability and quality to maintain things moving forward. And large enterprises are hitting the wall of we have a lot of legacy systems sitting around that are developed on code that nobody even uses anymore. Our workflows have never been updated to support any of these AI tools. We have these crazy data silos across the organization. We're now facing constraints on the fact that data created in a certain country has to live and remain in that country and can't be used to train the models for another country. So lots of things are happening that really are barriers to scaling our AI implementations. There's lots of growing and hidden costs in some of these things, whether it's infrastructure, new AI models. We're hearing more and more about the cost of tokens starting to just get out of control as people are using AI tools. So what are these growing and hidden costs? And obviously bringing our people and culture along. Change management is critical to align our people to the goals, the new career opportunities they have in this world. So what are we doing to bring our people through this change? We've seen a lot of the results from Gallup's new poll that engagement scores are at an 11-year low. It is mostly in middle management that is feeling the pressure and engagement scores are dropping. We're just not bringing our people along as we talk about all of the things AI is going to do and how it's going to impact everybody's roles. So these are some of the things that we're seeing in the consortium as well as across different studies on why we're seeing some of these AI projects fail and AI production systems fail. But that doesn't mean we're not seeing great successes. Again, we are seeing great successes. This is not doom and gloom AI. We are seeing some really interesting things done by major companies to get operationally efficient, uncover things that were impossible to uncover before. So we have a lot of use cases of companies that are doing great things. When I talk about all of our stuff is built on the real world experiences of our member companies, I want to just give a shout out to a subset of our member companies that have had a big influence on the work that we've been doing around AI and the development of the AI blueprint. This is a list of some of the people that were engaged with us. And as you can see, these are major, large companies that are trying to figure out how to leverage these things and are doing very interesting things with it. I've had some discussions with really small up and coming companies, and the speed they're moving at is incredible with using some of these AI tools. But again, if you're sitting in a company with 40 people and you're using these AI tools, that is very different than if you're sitting at, PTC or SAP or Oracle to try and use these AI tools. There is a scaling difference that takes place. So big thank you to these contributors, but also there were hundreds more people that influenced and impacted the thinking of this work. And what this work led to is, what does it take to have a successful AI implementation? And it really is not that different than any other AI or any other implementation. It just has a bit of a different flavor to it. So starting with, what is it we're trying to do? So do we have an AI strategy? What are we trying to achieve with AI? And do we have the funding and the support from the leadership team to play around with it and do things? Are we honest with ourselves about our organizational readiness from a system standpoint and a people standpoint? If we build a plan, do we know how to implement the plan? So do we have program management and change management methodologies in place to help us navigate all of the change? As we start to move to making this a reality, do we have the ability to focus our efforts, or are we always just chasing the shiny object? Do we have criteria for prioritizing and evaluating and selecting different use cases that we want to move from pilot to production? As we start to implement, do we have evaluation criteria for the success of the implementation? And is success in pilot, do we think that will equal success at scale? And as we move things to production, do we have the operations defined? Because we need to keep it going. And AI tools are like anything else. It needs ongoing investment, iteration, thought in order to keep it in production and to keep it live. So when we think about these things that take to make AI implementation successful, this all led to the AI blueprint, which, as I said, was released in March this year at the annual summit. Really breaks down into three components of prepare, execute, and iterate, with supporting materials like the principles for AI success, member examples, and companion worksheets that are examples from different member companies kind of put together to how do we do an intake for use case suggestions? How do we evaluate? How do we prioritize? How do we connect these to business goals? So a lot of great resources for members to use. Right now, this is a member-only resource, and each section contains a lot of information about how we prepare, how we execute, and how we iterate. It is heavy on prepare because what we are seeing across the industry is that preparing is by far the hardest and the most needed part of implementing AI tools. I would argue that prepare is the most important part of implementing any tool or implementing any change. And we're seeing that play out in the AI world. Great resource. Member companies are starting to use it. We're starting to get some feedback from them on things that work, things that don't work, which is how these things mature. So we need people to play with these in order to mature them and change them. And like I said, we don't have any static documentation. So we would love to hear from other people that have poked around at this on what you're finding and how it's working. We do have a lot of AI information available as public resources. So in the website, under AI and knowledge, there are different resources available, and this takes the AI blueprint and breaks it down into components and talks about it. So there's quite a bit available as well as public resources. Even though the AI blueprint itself is a member-only resource today, a lot of the information can be found, publicly on our website. So the second to this idea of the value of support is shifting and our people and roles are shifting, while they're kind of two distinct discussions that are taking place, they really bleed together. So when we think about the value of our organizations and what they do, this is a model that we've used for a while. And it basically says that there's kind of two dimensions to the work that we're doing. There's the nature of the work, from very activity-based known issues to very creative work, new issues. And then we have the nature of the interaction, which goes from very transactional to very relational, very high relationship required to get that work done. All of this work is valuable. So engagement across is existing across this entire spectrum. A very activity-based transactional thing can be very valuable. A very high relationship, creative new work can be very valuable. For 30 plus years, from the 1950s to the 1980s, almost all of this work was done by people. So people were the ones that were doing all of this work. In the 90s, that started to shift. And with KCS and self-service and the internet and all of these things starting to come into play, we developed a way that known answers could be delivered without people engaging. So we started to have more of these transactional activity known-based issues solved without human intervention. As we got into the 2010s to the early 2020s, maturing KCS implementations, the maturing KCS methodology, with maturing self-service tools and now layering in machine learning, started to shift that dynamic even more, where more and more transactional and even now starting to get into relationship-based work and activity-based, starting to get into even creative work, started to be able to be solved more and more with self-service. And this increased capacity, meaning we needed less headcount for the same amount of work or slower headcount growth with more work. And we have a lot of member company examples that showed that as their companies grew exponentially, they didn't need to grow their headcount at the same rate. So maybe the company grew revenue by 10% a year, support had to grow by 1% a year. So we really flattened that curve by being able to service our self-service and provide known answers faster and faster through mature KCS, self-service, and machine learning. Then we hit Gen AI, and it feels like in the last 2.5 years, I would argue it's even less than that because it really started to come into play in maybe the last 1.5 years in support. But it felt like this massive leap took place where these advancing AI technologies with our knowledge programs really provided a platform for us to leap forward. And this has a potentially dramatic impact on the number of people needed for traditional roles. And that has happened in a very short period of time. So we went from, 30 years, 10 to 15 years to absorb a change, 10 years to absorb a change, to maybe a year and a half to absorb a change. Humans are not great at that. Humans are not great at absorbing change at that pace. But what it does mean is we need to get more intentional about what our people are doing. And we need our people working on things that require real, true focus on our customer and our business. And this is accelerating our need for T-shaped people and T-shaped organizations, because more and more we need people with deep technical skills that can solve super hard, mission critical new issues, and people that are good at relationships and building strong relationships and advocating for customers. So we think about this shifting value. The shifting value is really being driven by a shift in demand. And if we think about demand, demand is not just the cases that come in the front door. That is a very small percentage of our actual demand. So we have to think about our total demand across the entire spectrum. This is a very simple model of demand. There are much more complex models out there. And demand has two dimensions to it as well. So as we move further and further into the demand model, right, the cost for the customer and the company starts to increase, or the effort and time that is spent by the customer and the company increases. And in the other axis, we have the cost per interaction decreasing. So as we get more towards prevent, it gets cheaper and cheaper to deliver answers. As we move further and further to the human intervention, and then having to escalate issues and involving our development organizations, the cost, effort, and time increases. What we want to try and do is case interception, and using things like prevent and our self-service and our digital channels to do case interception and intercept those cases that have answers that we can serve to our customers before they have to get to our assisted support channels. And as we think about shift left, we want to shift the right demand left. So how do we optimize these digital channels to shift the right things to the left? We do not want to shift everything to the left because human intervention is required for certain types of issues. But what is the right demand to shift left? If we don't understand our demand and we don't understand what can be shifted, it's really hard to target and say, this is where these new digital AI-powered automations can have a big impact on my operational efficiencies, the cost of delivering support, and improving customer experience. If you don't understand your demand and your total demand, it's really hard to move things to the left. This is a demand flow from a very high complexity member company. They have a very mature KCS implementation. And they're solving 90% of their demand through digital channels already, and only 10% require human intervention. I find this to be a very interesting model from the standpoint of where can we implement things to save costs. If we're already solving 90% of our demand through lower cost digital channels, it's hard to say that if we do a huge amount of implementations of new technologies, we're going to see some massive cost savings. At the executive summit, one of the executives said that he started to get pressure from his executives above him on, there's all these studies showing that you can have a 30-40% efficiency gain in support if you implement AI. So we need to be really looking at how we're going to implement AI. And they spent the next month going back to this team explaining that we've spent the last 10 years becoming more operationally efficient. We don't have a 30% efficiency gain left in the organization anymore because we've already used things like KCS, intelligent swarming, advanced search tools, great portals, integrations into our products for support to solve things very cheaply. Some members are starting to report that when they've layered some of these AI things on top of their digital channels, they're actually seeing 2 to 3 times more expense in cost per interaction because of the cost of the AI tool versus simple search. So if you don't understand this in your organization, it's really hard to go back and say, well, this is how I can save you money using these tools, and where can I put these operational efficient things in place at the entry point, right? When people are coming into our organization. So I would highly recommend people take time to fully understand the total demand they're seeing and where those demand and what those channels look like, and not just go in and assuming that all of my demand is in the case open and that's where all my energy is. So as we're seeing demand shift, as we're seeing value shift, what it is our organizations need to focus on is shifting. So we need to shift from this idea that we're only technical experts to being customer advocates. We need to start thinking about ourselves as customer advocates and advocating for the needs of our customers across the entire enterprise. We need to be strategic business partners and not just isolated problem solvers. We have heard for years how support knows more about what's going on in a customer than anybody else in the company. Well, how do we leverage those insights to be driving our business strategy and making our features and stability better? So how do we start to partner more and more across the organization? And we need to be a company differentiator. Support and service organizations are absolutely driving customer retention, customer renewals, and can be used as unique selling propositions in a new competitive market. How do we change that story? And obviously the skills will change as our focus needs to change. So how do we become more adaptable? How do we have critical thinking, more emotional intelligence, all of the skills that I think are somewhat inherent in service organizations, but how do we pull these out of people and say, this is the skill that we need to focus on in the future? This was a huge topic at the leadership committee last week, and we spent some time storyboarding the value of support and services to the company and to the customer, because those might be different things. Our value to the company might not be the same value proposition to the customer. One of the questions asked in the meeting was, if somebody in your organization was talking to the CEO and the CEO said, what have you done for my company lately? What would you respond with? Because saying that you're closing tickets faster, that you have great self-service is not a differentiator anymore. So what is the value to the company and what is the value to the customer? And this is something we'll continue to pull at in 2026. That led to, well, what are the roles and skills, the profile of the employees of the company at all levels, and what are the considerations for leaders moving forward? So starting to map out, what are the new roles we need? What are the new skills we need as we move to 2030? And finally, if these things are all true, which I believe they are, how do we change the narrative? So what is the storytelling we need to do? What are the measures that we need for the C-suite that aren't the same measures we're using today? And do we understand what the company actually cares about? And how do we attach ourselves to that? So some really interesting work took place last week. Well, how do we accomplish this? Because we've been talking about this for quite a while, but how do we actually accomplish this shift? So leaning into leadership in an adaptive organization and looking at how do we create the conditions for innovation in these changing environments are two bodies of work that are starting to come together to say, this is how we actually make this transformation, and how do we leverage these things to go change the narrative? Because as leaders in sport and services, we own the narrative and the culture. It's on our hands to change it. We can't be victims and think of ourselves as, well, nobody else will listen to us. How do we change the narrative? So that's going to be a big topic in 2026. What are some of the content focuses we had for 26? What have we been up to? So the AI blueprint, I've talked about that. AI and knowledge is obviously a key. PAR 2.0, the process alignment review, based on information and what member companies are doing, we've changed to the process alignment review. The KCS Infinity project has continued. I spoke a little bit about that at Summit, but it is major updates and changes to the practices guide that we expect to release at Summit in 2026. We gave some of the leaders a preview of that last week. Value and demand model, so updating approaches to measuring cost per channel for changing demand. So as these channels change, how do we measure the cost? And we did put a new learning management system in, a much more modern system, and we'll be expanding our training in 2026. We are working on new trainings right now that we'll release in 2026 for our online offerings. Just to talk a little bit about the process alignment review, the process alignment review is about how did we contribute to the solve loop and how often did we did it? And it broke it into, let's get started. So, it doesn't have to be super complicated and super complex and doing everything to get started. So essential, it's broken into three parts. Essential, like looking at reuse, then expanding it to look at reuse and create, and then a comprehensive look at reuse, improve, and create. So if you haven't looked at it, it's great. It is a major shift. And even just the word itself of moving from adherence to alignment moves us from a scoring of a knowledge worker to an indicator of engagement, as Monique Cadena said. So it's a great body of work, and there's a couple presentations available on it, as well as the resources. We also like to talk about our knowledge riches at the consortium. I also sometimes refer to them as our embarrassment of riches, simply because we have so much stuff available. Over the last year, we have captured dozens of videos of presentations. We have created dozens of blog posts. We have updated the KCS practices. We have updated the intelligence swarming practices. There is just so much information available. You should go explore it. But one of the things that we're going to start trying to do is surfacing some of these things to the top level. So in 25, we've started this and we'll continue it in 26. But this idea of surfacing, summarizing, and refreshing some of the content. So on the website, you'll see today that we have a top level AI and knowledge that directly takes you to the things that we're doing around knowledge powered AI, and then links to resources that are available. So instead of having to go into the digital library, searching or trying to find these things, we're going to do a better job of surfacing them. We also updated the customer experience models. So there's kind of three main models in there. And so bringing those forward. So instead of having them down into where I have to go find them in the praxis guide or in somewhere, having them more available at the top level. And we're also, and you'll see this in the AI blueprint, which is where we started doing some of this mainly. But not only here is the model, but here's how to use it. So if we think about the customer demand model, you can go read and learn about the customer demand model, get a deep understanding of it, but then also how do we use it to improve resource allocation, reduce customer friction. So some more calls to action around these different models. So we're going to try and take a lot of the things that we're doing and surface, summarize, and refresh those. And you'll definitely see that as you start to look at some of the things that are being done with KCS and everywhere else. So big effort that took place last year and one that will continue into 2026. So we'd love to have everybody come join us for different things in 2026, because together we are shaping what's next. And if we think about 2026 and beyond, our success in the future is based on our ability to optimize the value and success by leveraging organizational knowledge. KCS helps us do that. We need to accelerate organizational collaboration, not just within our service organizations, but across the entire company. We need to be better about problem solving these really complex issues as we shift more and more of our demand to digital channels. And we need to have employee upskilling as the roles and the skills we need people to have is changing. Intelligence swarming helps us design a model and a system and an organizational structure that does that. We need to drive productivity, employee retention, and growth with really intentional leadership. And the leadership in an adaptive organization helps us think through all of those things. We need to keep our customers at the center of support and experience for the entire company, and then leverage all of that as we go forward. And our customer experience models are ways to think about our engagement with customers across any channel, and achieving our efficiencies by leveraging all these great artificial intelligence technologies are bucketed under the predictive customer engagement. So when we look at the way the consortium thinks about the organization of our work and how these things all intersect, and then really what it is that they're delivering, the models that you've developed with us over the years help us really think about how are we going to be successful in this world of change, new technologies, and new engagement models. So come and explore all this with us. None of this is static. All of it is changing, and it's changing pretty quickly. We mostly engage through events. We call everything an event at the consortium. We have some great upcoming sessions. We have a 3-part series on agentic AI for members only, done by Jeff Elzer. We already had the first one. The second and third ones are coming up in December and January. In January, we're also going to do a session on leveraging the consortium. So when we think about all the resources we have available, whether it is the content we have, the models we have, the online training offerings we have, the amazing aligned service providers that we work with, the global group of certified trainers, there are a lot of ways to be successful in your customer engagement by leveraging the resources of the consortium as a member or as somebody who is not a member. So we're going to have a session to kind of talk through that. Then in February, we have an in-person event taking place in London on the evolution of the Evolve Loop. So the Evolve Loop is shifting and changing. A lot of the automation tools we have are helping us do things that we couldn't do before. So we're going to get together in London, hosted by ConnectWise at their facility, which is in the center of London. It is like downtown London, not at Heathrow Airport, saying you're in London. And that should be a really great event for mainly for our European participants, but obviously anybody is able to come if they're a member. And you should register now and put on your calendar the Innovation Summit 2026, where AI knowledge and the future of support will be explored at Hotel Valley Ho, April 27th through 30th in Scottsdale. The hotel is a really cool, unique property. It is very much a mid-century modern vibe, but completely updated and refreshed and new. So we're really looking forward to that. And there are discounts available if you register before December 31st. So if you have questions about that, reach out to Service Innovation support at serviceinnovation.org to inquire about that. But there are some discounted rates available before December 31st. But really excited by that event. And a lot of the topics that we are continuing to explore will be major topics at the summit. So thank you, everybody, for spending an hour with us today to take a look at all the things that took place in 2025 and a little bit of what we're going to be doing in 2026. And a big thank you from the consortium staff on all the things you do to help us be successful, to support the consortium through membership, and really giving up your time and energy and your perspectives to move this industry forward. It couldn't happen without you. So I hope everybody has a great holiday season and a great new year, and we will see you in January.